Welcome to the thin air of Denver, where we're doing Connect This. Kim and I are at Mountain Connect, and it works better at 9 or 10,000 feet rather than 7, I guess. But we're in Denver, and we're going to have a really fun show. We started live on time, but then realized that we didn't start live. So we're back, and those 2 minutes will be lost to history. So sorry about that.
We're back and we're better.
Yes, super better. Today we are, so Kim and I are both in Denver for Mountain Connect, which is, I think, possibly the best broadband show in the nation this year, and for like interesting content and stuff like that. We'll see. But we are going to talk about a variety of FCC topics. And we are going to start off with a couple of FCC things. We're going to finish up with the big one, which is Chair Rosenworcel hinting that they are finally going to increase the definition of broadband, and maybe half the conversation will be about whether we should be nice to the FCC now or not. We are having Dr. Robert Wack, who was the city council president of Westminster, Maryland, when they decided to build a municipal network. We talked about them previously. And when we were talking about them, I said they were a remarkable success. There was an article in Broadband Communities Magazine, which actually talked about what has happened over the years since they did it. And Travis was all like, they weren't successful. They had to raise taxes, which I countered was not accurate. And anyway, we decided that we wanted to talk more about it. And so we brought on an expert in it. Also, Kim says that Dr. Robert Wack is one of her favorite people. So, we'll get to talk about that, I guess, maybe. We're going to start. Kim and I are both in the same hotel in different rooms.
Yeah, sure you are. Sure you are.
I'm in a suite, Chris. So I don't know. Are you in a suite too, or no?
No, I am in the room that they give you when you show up super late, and they forgot that they were supposed to house you. And even though you've had a miserable time of travel and you've showed up at about 10 o'clock at night, they are still cleaning your room somehow that they just gave you. And the two lovely women who speak only Spanish were very confused what you were trying to tell them as you just wanted to put your bags down and then go see if anyone was left at the bar. So a wonderful introduction to Mountain Connect for me.
I suspect they had been renting your room out by the hour, just thinking there.
And you get a suite when you show up too early and they don't have any other rooms available. So they just give you this one. That's what happens.
For me, they're just like, oh, you could just wait, like we'll call you sometime this evening when we remember. So anyway, this is not the, I will say this, I decided that we would say that this is an advertisement for Marriott Bonvoy's Wi-Fi. If it is bad for Kim and I, that is also an advertisement. So far, it seems pretty good. So, we'll see how that goes. But for the show, we've got Travis Carter from USI Fiber. Welcome, Travis.
Mr. Mitchell, how are you today?
I'm doing good. I thought about doing a breakfast delivery of wings to your house yesterday morning, but then chickened out. So, but I did bike near Medicine Lake. Very beautiful.
Thank you. And it was early. I was probably still sleeping. And I guess I didn't read this FCC thing, but I'm finally excited. Gigabit by gigabit finally is coming.
Finally, yes.
It only was released in 1998, so it's about time that we have it across the country. Congratulations, United States.
And we'll break your heart when we come to that segment.
What? More chicken wings coming?
Doug Dawson, CCG Consulting, welcome.
I just want everyone to know you missed the best 2 minutes ever. So the part that we lost.
Yeah.
So.
As an advertisement for my community broadband bits show, apparently I showered Doug with praise in my interview with Gigi Sohn last week. So if you haven't listened to community broadband bits, highly recommended, because I apparently didn't say enough nice things about Travis.
No, two of us weren't even mentioned, Ryan and myself. So
I'm going to have to go listen to it now.
I know,
Lisa must have edited it out, because I remember talking about how awesome you were.
Oh, no. Doug was... Doug was front and center on that episode. So the rest, Kim was there, but the rest of us were omitted.
We also have Kim McKinley, who is the star of all events that she goes to. She is the Chief Marketing Officer and VP at UTOPIA Fiber and cannot walk 3 steps without people stopping her in the hallways, apparently. What's going on for you in this show, Kim?
I've hugged a lot of people, and I mean, I was at my hug quota about 8:30 this morning, but it's good to see everyone. I think this is a great show. You're seeing a lot of new people in the industry, and you're seeing a lot of people who've been here a long time, but there's some great discussions happening. So I'm really stoked to see how it all plays out for the next couple of days.
Kim sees someone, the main reaction is a hug. I see someone, and their main reaction is to look at my name tag and say, "Oh, Chris, you're still here."
You're still in the industry, huh, Chris? Yeah.
Wow. Plus, she gets a suite, and you get the leftover.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I put a little effort into my hair even. You'll notice this, I put a little product in it, and I feel
Wow.
like, no one recognizes me because I'm not as slobby as I normally am. So, but I did get in. They didn't.
You are
they
in,
didn't tell me
huh?
they didn't tell me they lost the registration, so I'm holding on to this so no one takes it. All right, so we talked previously about soon-to-be Commissioner Gomez, Ana Gomez, I believe, and my understanding is that she'll probably get a floor vote in September to join the FCC, which will be, I think, my prediction being correct. Doug was thinking November, if I remember correctly, and so the FCC will have its 3-2 majority in maybe a month. So
I feel like you just forgot what Travis's and my predictions were, which I don't remember either, but I'm sure they were better than yours of when this was going to happen, Chris. So
no, I think Kim, I think you and I agreed that she was going to be seated, and then nothing was really going to happen.
okay, so I went to. Okay, I'm good with this, but I think her being seated is going to be an interesting thing. And why did she get through so fast when Gigi was blocked so heavily? And that is the question that I have, and why.
And I don't.
Anyone else
think
want to take a
any of us
stab
know.
at that, Doug? Go ahead.
Well, none of us know why, because she's likely to vote for all the same items, and so that's really a mystery when you think about it.
So I'll put 2 reasons up there. One is she doesn't have a history of fearlessly working. I mean, I shouldn't say it that way. Gigi specifically has a history of like working her butt off, and so even if they vote the same way, Gigi I think would have done far more in the public interest in order of pushing things forward. All the little things that one can do with the power of a commissioner. Ana Gomez comes in with a lot of credibility of having worked in the public interest, not in the same way that Gigi has, but she's totally acceptable to all the big monopolies because she's worked for them. She's part of the club in a way that I think Gigi is not a part of the club, in that Gigi will rock the boat and Ana Gomez will not.
I mean, I'm sure the big guys feel they know her, and so that to them that makes her predictable. Doesn't mean she will be.
Correct. I don't know her.
Yeah.
I don't know her at all. I'm just trying to reflect what I've heard from other people that actually do know her in this situation.
I mean, the reason I predicted November was none of the cabinet positions and none of the higher level votables got through this quick. This is extraordinary fast for the Senate to pass it through this quick. So
it's amazing when the big monopolies are in favor of you, how quickly you can move.
Boy, it did, sailed right through. So, well, she's not there yet, but it sounds like a done deal. So
yeah. Here's one that I'm curious about, and another one that I think is not high on Travis's radar. So it's the $75 ACP for high cost areas. And good, Travis.
Don't I get to comment on Gomez?
Yes, please do.
Okay, so let me ask what everyone's wondering. Is there something we're waiting for, that we need another commissioner? Or, I mean,
there's a lot of things.
Is there? I mean, anything like really? Anything
a lot of
relevant?
issues stuck on two votes.
Okay.
Well, there's
Irrelevant's an interesting question, Travis. Because how relevant is the FCC?
Well, no, I'm just wondering, is there some reason that we need this person in there that's going to release a log jam that's going to improve people's lives?
Well, they're not going to get a vote on changing the broadband speeds without her, I don't believe. So that's one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. I like her. Gigabit for all. Here we go.
I mean, I think one could argue that the nutrition labels might be better. I think we can talk about that here. There's a bunch of things that I don't know exactly why they're sold, but I assume that a fair number of them are because to get them passed requires getting the approval of two people whose main focus is trying to punish Google and Facebook as opposed to actually doing anything productive. I mean, Symington is on there just on Section 240 things because Trump wanted to try to punish the tech companies he didn't like. And I think that's the only thing he cares about. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a big commission watcher, but you have several people in the commission that don't care about any of this stuff. And so with Gomez, hopefully now we'll have 3 votes to at least move some things forward that are actually important rather than just being flashy. And the last thing I would say is that for many people, the commission seems to be, and this was one of the reasons I love Gigi, was this is not the case. But for many people, the commission is a way to advertise that you would be good at a more important job. And that's what we're seeing from a lot of the commissioners. And I think that's why we're not seeing much of these things moving forward.
Will it improve? Are the maps going to improve or what?
Overnight.
Okay. All right. Well, that's
good. I don't have any faith that Gomez is going to help improve the maps because I don't think this is a matter of Democrats against Republicans. Yeah, Peggy's right. We're supposed to be nice to the FCC. They've gotten, we're seeing some real progress in a couple of areas maybe, but I just they're which FCC commissioner has made it their mission to try to make sure that we had accurate maps that would be usable, and actually have interesting things like pricing data and things like that. I don't know.
Okay. Well, let's hope.
There's a really good trust. Your question is good, Travis. And I think if we had someone on from one of the DC centric public interest groups, they could tell us several things. I don't know. I'm
half joking, but I'm half serious. Is there something?
Yeah, it's a very good
limbo that we're waiting for? I don't know. I don't watch it either.
Kim?
No, I don't have an answer to Travis's question, but I do have a question of, do you think that some of the FCC members are not speaking up or making a big deal about the maps because they are waiting for the 5th commissioner and kind of holding their cards close, or do you just think they'll never come out with an opinion and some criticism regarding it?
I think they don't want to talk about the maps at all because they can only get negative comments. Right, Peggy?
Yeah, I mean, the maps need, we need to start over more or less from what I can tell. And no one at the commission wants to admit that they've made a mistake from what I can tell. I mean, when I was coming out of college, it was the beginning of the GW Bush administration, right? And one of the things that I remember clearly was this era in which George Bush could not admit that he ever got anything wrong. And that is what every single FCC commissioner seems to be in, is that everything they've ever done is correct. Everything is going perfectly. And anyone else who is saying contrary is a whiner and is not helpful to the cause.
So they're drinking their own Kool-Aid, basically. Is happening?
All 4 of them. Yes, I agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
We need to get back to your question on $75 ACP, though. That was the question.
Yeah, let's get back to that in a second.
That was a long answer to that question.
Yeah. No, I mean, this is the thing. I want to be nice to the FCC, but it's just FCC has been so bad. It's been bypassed in a lot of important ways. Anyway, the $75 ACP, it looks like they mostly punted to NTIA, which I think might have been required in statute, more or less. I think
it was required in statute. They didn't have a choice. They just had to implement it. Yeah.
So there's a $30 Affordable Connectivity Plan bonus available, discount available to qualifying families. It's $75 in tribal lands, and now it will also be $75 in high cost areas that qualify. The FCC has basically moved the rulemaking forward so that as they identify what that actually means, some ISPs that are serving areas that are extremely high cost will get a larger discount for service, presumably because they may be having to offer higher price services.
But we don't really know how they're going to do the high cost. But what happens is the ISPs have to file and ask for the extra money, and they have to plead their case
every year.
And by the time they get around to doing the first set of those, the funds will be out of money. That'll be interesting. So
It does look like that. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
okay.
Is
So
this
we're
an
going to come.
everlasting program? I'm just curious because when does it not qualify for high cost? And aren't we putting all this money into BEAD so we can reduce the cost of broadband and get more connectivity to people? I mean, it just seems a little counterintuitive to some degree that we're like, oh, we're spending all this money to connect people, but let's on the other side give more money to people for high cost broadband. And in a lot of those rural areas, it still sucks in those like high cost areas. So it's an interesting perspective. I'm noodling this one, Chris. I'm noodling this one.
Well, the issue I think is, and I always use the example of, in the extremely depopulated or unpopulated West that never was populated in many areas, if it takes you 3 hours to reach a service call and your tech can only average 1.5 calls per day, you even if you have a network that has very low operating costs, you may still have a significant cost of doing business. So, I think that's what the focus is. So if your costs are that high to keep the network operating, at that point, if your price is going to be $100 a month for decent fiber, then the idea being that $30 discount isn't going to do a whole lot for low-income families. So I think that's the thinking. And per usual, the implementation is the challenge. And as Rai reminds me on the acpdashboard.com, every 2 weeks, our colleague Christine in this case, updates it. And right now we're forecasting there's less than 10 months of money left. And that is at the current rate of drawdown.
Okay.
Well, I have to agree with Peggy, who popped up a comment here. I just don't see the tie-in between the ACP rate. I mean, if they want to give subsidy to these areas, this is a backdoor way to do it. So.
Well, that's what I don't understand, Doug, right? Why don't they just give it directly? If they're going, are they still?
Well, again, this was Congress did this. This was written in law. So
right. This is explicitly not a portable subsidy program, right?
Yeah,
a portable subsidy program gives a discount, gives a voucher to a person. That person chooses who to give it to. This is a weird combination of different approaches that seems unwieldy.
So somebody snuck this in the federal language. It's a mystery.
Yeah, because it's like, can rural telcos raise their price to get that 75 subsidy? What if they only had a $65 price point, and are they going to raise it up to 95 to get the entire 75? So it's it just doesn't seem that it would work.
To answer that question, in LA, before ACP, AT&T had a $10 product because they could get the $9.95 from the Lifeline. And as soon as ACP was passed, they raised their price to $30. So the answer is yes, they will raise the price to at least $75.
But I don't know if AT&T will qualify in any of these areas, and I do think that the rural telcos may have different approaches.
It answers the question of will they raise the rate to get the subsidy. Yes.
Yeah, like some companies are trying to drink as much milk from the government teat as possible. Absolutely. Others are not. And so I want to resist cynicism for 10 seconds here. In this case.
Travis, how much extra are you going to get out of ACP?
Oh, I'm imagining zero, but it always goes back to the same.
Travis, no, you're missing an opportunity. You should declare all the people living on park streets, on the streets controlled by the park board, as extremely high cost, because they are. If you have $25,000 permit, like boom.
Yeah, but do you know how much a audit is from these guys? You know what that costs? So you know what? I'm staying away from this stuff. But I keep asking the same question of everyone. I don't know if we have a good answer. We always talk about low cost, affordable internet. What is that number?
We have talked about it before. We talked about it with Angela Seifer from NDIA, but it's been 2 years, and we can talk about it again. That will be a future show.
Okay, because it would be really nice to have a target.
Yep.
And there is not one. Yes.
Maybe the FCC will decide that, huh?
So one more
I don't know if you know, the target is $75 in rural high cost areas.
Okay, so the formula is ACP minus or at plus $5.
Yes.
Okay, all right, there it is. All right, so affordable is considered $35 or $80, right? Okay, or I got it.
So we have, we're going to bring out Dr. Wack in a second. Before that, state departments of transportation. In this conference, someone already came up to me and they were like, Chris, we have a situation where we're trying to do this interesting project in this rural area, and the State Department of Transportation is requiring like an 80-cent per mile fee for maintenance costs on a yearly basis, and that is killing our project. And I said, well, that reminds me of New York, where they got rid of that, and they had that, and it was killing projects, and they got rid of it. So they were like, that's awesome. Are there any other examples? And I thought Doug would know.
Well, it's interesting because about 4 months ago, the NTIA asked the states to all get rid of their barriers. They said a lot of you states have barriers that are going to make it impossible to do BEAD. I haven't read of anyone changing their rules in the last 4 months. And many of them said, hell no, we do it the way we do it. Because departments of transportation are very hard-minded folks. And those revenues are what pay their bill. I'm sure that they're probably not funded in Colorado by tax revenues. They're funded by those fees. So they're not about to cut them and lose their funding, right? So we get all these wacky ways that government agencies are funded. There are a ton of states where it's very difficult to get permits on state roads. Probably half of the states. And so, the tax isn't the only thing that makes it hard. Some of them, it's just incredibly hard to get the permits in the first place.
Right.
So, there's a whole range of places where the state is a big holdup if you have to build along those roads. So, yeah.
If they did remove that fee, do you think Lumen would lower prices? Because they would probably save so much money in Colorado.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. They would immediately lower all their prices because they're good corporate citizens. Yes.
Travis, any reactions?
Well, I mean, I don't know about Kim, but when we're looking at expanding, obviously in our network, you either go north, south, east, or west. You go and interview those towns, and the very first question you ask is, let's talk about your permitting fees. So there is a town north of you, Chris, that has very difficult and expensive permitting fees. So they are omitted from any future build. And I'm not going to sit and fight with them.
Right.
Or going down, state roads. We just go down a county road instead, or go down a city road.
So you have challenges with the state? I mean, that's the known issue.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we can't go down the interstate, which would be really handy. But we're
and so the people that live along state roads, you don't serve them; you just bypass them.
Yeah, and it's almost gotten to that point now where it's just a non-service area. And so when people call up and say, "Why are we not served?" Well, here's the myriad of reasons that you're not served, and what do they all have in common? There is some government barrier in the way of allowing us to provide service.
Governments never provide barriers. I have no idea what you're talking about, Travis, at all.
Do you want to answer that question?
Yeah, I think you have challenges with anyone, but I also think that we have a great relationship with the UDOT here in Utah, or I'm not in Utah today, but if you have to have great relationships, and a lot of times it's always going to be a challenge, but you can't force the situation. I see people actually escalate some of the conflict and permitting processes because they just get nasty and they get angry, and then that just becomes like a personal, emotional battle.
Ruben's asking about why there are permitting fees, and I was curious if you can answer that.
If I can answer that? I think that's a Doug question.
No,
that's a Doug question.
I promise you it's part of the way that the Department of Transportation and that state funds themselves.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, also, I mean, there's additional things too. I mean, like, depending on what kind of permit, there are different fees. I've shared, was it a year ago? And let's bring in Dr. Wack, because he's seen this up close from Westminster. I'll introduce you after we kill this topic, so people just have to take our word for it that you know what's going on. But in my neighborhood, there was someone that installed conduit under the sidewalk, and then the fix for it was awful. And so the city or county has to send people out to make sure that it's that they're inspecting it to make sure that it was rebuilt correctly and that sidewalks aren't destroyed or cracked or anything like that. I think that there's real costs of being in the right of way. And then there's the simple fact that this is a valuable piece of land, and the local government is charged to manage that in a way that is beneficial to the public. And so, we have right of way permitting, because it would be very difficult for private companies to negotiate with every individual landowner to put a pole or a conduit in their yard. So we abstract it away, and local government is supposed to manage that on behalf of the public, which doesn't mean just giving it away for free. So there is a balance to be struck.
But most places have a one-time fee to pay for that extra effort. It pays for the inspection, it pays for all those steps. So you may have a sizable, especially on a state road, you might have a $500 fee for each application or something to pay for those people. So they don't do it for free, but they're supposed to, most states figure you do it at cost. About half the states are actually fairly easy to work with. So they're not all difficult. So.
All right, Robert, what are your thoughts on fees?
Sure. So, there's the larger philosophical principle as to whether there should be a fee at all. And Chris, I think you just answered that question capably. And then there's, what the fee is supposed to be doing. And certainly there are immediate costs with, as you mentioned, personnel inspections, short-term disruptions. But then there's very real follow-on costs for remediation. Often the work done to restore the right-of-way needs to be redone a lot of times. It definitely shortens the useful life of, if it's a road, no matter what the utility does to restore it, they've just knocked 5-10 years off of the useful life of that road surface. So there's going to be a downstream remediation cost there, but that's 5-10 years out. And then there's sort of the larger carrying cost of all the other crap that's hard to quantify but is real. And then on top of that are the squeeze, with the shakedown, which is real, and I've seen it from the municipal side, and I fought against it especially with our project. So that's a real phenomenon, but it's a real phenomenon that's on top of very legitimate costs that the local government should and needs to recover. And so then the question is what's the structure and what are the amounts of those fees? And that's a reasonable discussion to have. And local governments, they do their best, but they often screw it up. And the shakedown and the squeeze is definitely a real thing.
Kim,
I need to ask a question. Can we really have Dr. Wack on the show, since he has books in his background and none of us look like we're educated whatsoever? I mean, he might
usually
be a little too smart for us.
And besides Dr. Robert Wack, I'll just start calling Robert because it's too awkward, and we've known each other well enough to get past that.
Indeed.
He is an author, and so he gets to do whatever he wants. Having written a book,
and you're not.
To close off that section, though, Ruben asks, basically, other places charging fees so high they needlessly prevent progress? Yes, they are. They are fewer than the monopoly industry claims, and more than many of our allies want to admit. They're somewhere in between, and we can do better, and we should be doing better. So,
80 cents
with that
per year, 80 cents per foot per year has got a lot of shakedown in it. There, I mean, that's a lot of money.
Yes.
So.
Yep. Dr. Wack, Robert, we're going to talk about Westminster. We're not going to talk about whether or not we have self-determination. If anyone watching the show ever has a chance to grab a beer with Robert and talk about whether or not we have true self-determination, highly recommend that experience. So great philosophical discussion.
Hey, you have to say they have to buy him a beer if you're going to ask.
Oh, yeah.
You can't. That service doesn't come free.
It's not going to be just one. This is not a 45-minute discussion. Westminster, you're northwest of Baltimore. You're in a conservative part of Carroll County there. Carroll County is conservative. Westminster, you had a very innovative public-private partnership in which the city owns the fiber and then hands off to Ting, who then completed it. The network is fully built out for several years now, and you wrote an article for Broadband Communities talking about what the progress that you've seen and all that. Do you want to give us the top line of that? Because I think we want to get into some questions around a little bit deeper after that.
Sure. So all the things you said, yes. We financed the project with general revenue bonds, and our goal for the financial performance of the network was always to cover the debt service on those general obligation bonds. We were very cautiously projecting that was going to take somewhere between 7-10 years to do, with a very gradual ramping of the take rate. And it's been about 5 years now, and we're closing in on doing that probably by the end of this year. You would have thought with the notice that you gave me for this, I would have checked the numbers recently, but I didn't. So the last time I looked was when I wrote that article, which was back in the spring. And it looked like by the end of this year, we were going to cover debt service in terms of total revenue from the project. But we still have the operating costs, which, we knew were going to be an issue. And so the city budget still subsidizes the operating costs, which aren't crazy. It's just the spot repairs and doing drops and, the occasional fiber cut from, a backhoe or a shovel or something. But it's not, we don't have the network operations piece of it, so we don't have to worry about that. So that's kind of like the quick and dirty of where we're at and the success that I talked about in that article.
What do you have, like 15, 20,000 people? I'm trying to remember.
In the population of the city is 18,000. It's about 6,100 serviceable addresses. And then in the greater West, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, in the greater Westminster area, it's about 38,000 and another probably about 8,000 serviceable addresses, but we don't reach them yet. That's our next goal.
And so Comcast has service there and does a decent job, but wasn't anything that was really helping to spur economic development or leading to next generation type stuff. Just give us a sense of, you're not a blind booster to this project. You're someone who thinks critically about it. What has happened that has made, in your mind, that has made this project worth doing?
Well, it's what didn't happen. It wasn't happening. So yes, Comcast was, and Verizon, we had Verizon DSL out here. We don't have Fios, and we'll never have Fios. The Comcast was our incumbent cable provider, and they, it was okay, 25.5. But so I was on the cable commission leading up to this experience, and just the fighting with them on the cable commission on dumb little things like extending service out to, a rural area that just barely met the density criteria. And they'd fight us tooth and nail for, 10 houses. And it would take a year, and we'd beat each other over the head with lawyers. And the other piece was in 2000, they agreed to do 2 strands of an institutional network, an iNet, that touched all of the city halls and some of our local government facilities. But then they wouldn't let us use it, because they put so many restrictions on the use of this that it became impossible to light and use for any benefit. So the whole experience of negotiating with them and just dealing with them was so unpleasant and so unproductive that when 2008, 2009 came along and BTOP and all that, we realized, maybe there's another way. And that's what, we didn't get any of that money, which is why we had to put the bonds out. But that's what got the ball rolling. Actually, the ball started rolling even earlier than that. We built a middle mile network in the county, again, because Comcast was so obdurate. They just weren't going to budge on some of these things. So the county went ahead and put together these anchor institutions and did a really robust middle mile all through our county. And then that was interconnected to the outside world with the BTOP money. And then that set the stage for Westminster.
One last thing I want to set the stage with, and then I'll see if anyone else has questions. But when we were originally discussing it, Travis had done his own research on some of it. And when we were talking about the benefits and sweating in your article, he brought up that unmentioned, at least as I recall, was the significant property tax increase, I believe it was, or tax increase prior to moving forward with the network.
Yep.
And that's something that you and I had talked about before. So I was just curious if you can walk us through what role that or connection that has.
Sure. So I'm pretty sure that is mentioned in the article because it was a necessary predicate to be able to do this, but it wasn't done because for the fiber network. It was done because our fiscal house was in shambles. The 2008-2009 fiscal crisis blew a $3 million hole in our budget. We lost $1.5 million in annual police funding, and we lost $1.5 million in road funding from the state of Maryland because of their financial problems. So overnight, boom, $3 million gone. And it had been clear to us, even in earlier budget years, 2000, not too long after I got on the council, which was 2003, it became clear, like, we don't take in enough money for all the crap that we buy. And we kept kicking the can down the road, as most local governments do, by borrowing and, stealing from reserves. And, we were able to do that until that crisis. And then bam, it was all gone. And we had to raise taxes. But we raised taxes just to bring us back to sort of baseline, where we could do the annual capital projects. We had to do the road stuff, repairs to buildings, the other public works stuff. So yeah, we did a big tax increase, but that big tax increase, all it did was then get us back to even, so that then we could contemplate other projects. We already had some debt for other capital projects, so our bonding capacity was sort of constrained given our other financial challenges. Once we raised those taxes, we then had enough revenue to sort of take care of all that other stuff, which then, effectively increased our bonding capacity. So we took the bonds on, developed this business plan of making this thing self-sustaining over the long term, and it worked. So yeah, we raised taxes, but we didn't raise taxes for the fiber. And we haven't raised taxes since then to cover any expenses of the project. The project is on its way, as we expected, to paying for itself. It still takes a subsidy from the general fund, but that's going to go away.
Now, you really raised taxes, a big tax rate, because for years and years, you didn't do the little ones.
Yeah.
You should have been doing little property tax increases all along. So, yeah.
Shoulda, woulda, coulda.
Yeah,
I'm not familiar with that idea. We only get big property tax increases right now.
Oh, I live in a big, every once in a while they hit you with a hammer. Yes, I'm with you.
No, we're at 8 or 10% every year, I think, right now.
Wow.
It's been a hard slog. Go ahead.
Wow.
Travis, you have muted too.
Oh no, I was just curious how it was the public reacted to it, because what I read was 33%.
Yep,
that probably exactly didn't. Right. It probably didn't go over very well.
No, so this is a really important lesson, one that I go on and on about for my fellow elected officials about political courage and staying the course. Is at the time, you would have thought we wanted to sacrifice babies on an altar with stone knives. You would have thought that we were going to open the gates of hell and release Zool and was going to lay waste to the city of Westminster. It was the apocalypse that these crazy liberals on the city of Westminster city council were going to raise property taxes 33%. And remember, this is at the height of the Tea Party craziness. So this is 2011. 2010, we did it 2010, effective 2011, and they came after us hammer and tongs and waving their copies of the Constitution and all that. And in the 2011 election, I only got back in by 11 votes, and 2 of my colleagues got picked off because of this. And none of the dire predictions, none of the economic apocalypse, none of it came true. Property values kept going up. businesses kept coming in, people kept wanting to move to Westminster. It didn't have any negative effects on anything. And it had a lot of positive effects because now we're paving our roads again, we're fixing our parks again, and now we have a fiber network because we got our house in order.
Yeah, but not to mention the extra tourism for people coming to see Zool. I mean, I'm coming now. So.
Well, we kept Zool at bay.
Okay.
Kim, any thoughts on Zool?
Okay, well, Chris, we're just going to ignore that. Let's move on to that. I was going to ask you, Robert, what do you think when you're going through this process in your head? What do you think was where you floundered the most, where you kind of were a little hesitant of doing this decision? Because I think that's a useful answer for the people who are in this process, because it's harder than people really make it out to be.
No, it's
easier than it. They make it out to be easier than it is.
Yeah, no, it's definitely hard, and I wish there was some nice clean thing like, if you do this, then you're going to be fine. There's so many, like, looking back, it's a little scary how much luck we had that we were able to pull this off. Luck in the sense of the composition of the council and the fact that we were able to maintain the political will through those critical first couple of years. Luck in that nothing else bad happened, after 2008, we had this period of relative stability and prosperity. Luck in the sense that, during construction, we've got a ton of rock out here, and about half of the backbone is underground. And if that had been worse, it could have really bumped the construction costs way up. We ended up bringing it in considerably under budget. Luck in that we didn't screw up the management of the construction. This is something that the city had never done before. And our public works guys had a lot of angst about pulling this off, and we're actually pretty resistant early on, but they eventually got on board, and they saw that this is doable, and it's a cool new skill that they were all learning. And so, but there's luck there. So what would I've done differently?
I think luck also, you got a great
Well, while you're doing that, have you quantified the benefits? I mean, obviously you saved money on not having, now you have your own private network, I assume.
Yeah. So we thought about it. We talked about it. We made some half-hearted attempts to gather some baseline data. But as we were looking, at those kinds of efforts and the metrics that people were using, it became clear that there wasn't anything out there, a methodology that was so ironclad that it was worth making the investment, because we were going to have to pay a consultant. We didn't have the expertise to do this, and we were spending so much money on other crap that, frankly, everybody was just like, you know what, we're going to keep our fingers crossed and hope that it works out for the best. Lots of anecdotes I can give you, but in terms of rock solid data that an economist would say, yes, this is clearly a 15% improvement. I don't know, but I can tell you that property values are up, and that we have weathered all of the other little dips and stuff that have happened in between time. And COVID was a huge validation. We sailed through COVID as a city. People just were astonished at how well the network did and how well people were able to adapt right away to all the remote stuff. And businesses generally love it. They are very, very happy, and lots of anecdotes about, we added 10 employees, or we now do business internationally, and blah, blah, blah. But again, hard to quantify enough that you could really make a straight-faced argument with data.
Travis?
I gotta ask, because everyone wants to know, did you do a feasibility study?
Oh yeah. So We did, and actually,
really? Oh, see, I was hoping you didn't. Okay, all right.
no, we did. We went through the whole consultant rigmarole, but we actually ended up having really good consultants, and maybe that was luck too. But the planning, the effort that we went through was pretty exhaustive, and we spent some money. Nothing crazy, but we definitely spent some money. But it did two things. One, it's certainly set expectations in the community about why we were doing this, and the public discussion, which frankly I was a little skeptical of. They're like, do we really need to do this? Do we really need to have focus groups? And all that stuff. But in retrospect, I think it really did help, because we did get some political blowback at some point. But because we had done these surveys and because we've done these focus groups, we had data that said, you know what, the voters want this, especially our business community. The business community was, we had, I don't know, I can't remember the exact numbers, but, maybe 150 respondents to this survey we sent out to local businesses, and the positive response to, do you want better broadband? It was like 98%. They two-up business were totally dissatisfied with what they were getting from the incumbent at the time, even paying for the premium business service. And the money quote, or the money anecdote for that, was a business that did a lot of graphic design work and would have these multi-gigabit files that they'd have to move back and forth to clients. And they had a client out in Chicago that they were on a close, tight deadline with. They needed to get a 5 gig file out there, and they couldn't, because their premium business class connection kept timing out. And so finally they put it on a little memory stick and FedExed it out there. And the guy's like, why am I paying for this crap if I'm still FedExing memory sticks? And that's all gone now with the service that we have now. So, but anecdotes.
So, Travis, were you going to follow up?
No, I just, I'm sympathetic to the plight now, because as I'm looking to purchase another home, my number one question is, tell me about the internet. And if there's no fiber there, I'm not moving there. So,
yep.
And I imagine a lot of your young people that are from that community, they'd be hightailing it to Baltimore or wherever to get out of town, because who wants suboptimal internet anymore? If you're over the age of 60, maybe you do, but right. Everybody else. That's why I'm half joke about the feasibility study. I can't imagine you find more than 2 people that don't want it in your whole community.
Yeah. But the feasibility study is about educating the elected leaders as well, yep. and actually just getting particularized numbers, which people will take more attention to. I mean, I think about this a fair amount. Like, just some of it's just psychological. Like, I do Broadband 101 webinars frequently, and having me do a Broadband 101 webinar that is identical to 10 other ones, people would rather have me do that than watch a video of me having done the last one. For whatever reason, like, it's just there's something about it. Like,
you're so charismatic, of course.
Yeah, right.
If I was so charismatic, why is it that it's literally like one day after I almost visit your house on my bicycle, you decide you're going to move?
Well, because I didn't know where I lived, So is the data public about your market share or not?
About our market share?
Yeah.
I mean, now it is. I put it in Broadband Community Magazine.
Okay, yeah.
Which clearly Travis read. Clearly Travis read that.
I was stuck at 33% tax until I heard this conversation. So you got to be crushing it.
We're doing pretty well. And I know, and I've heard anecdotally that Comcast's market share in the city of Westminster is decreasing. So, okay. We're doing something right. Along the lines with the real estate thing, there are some other anecdotes where the realtors are now finally, because it took a while to educate them, are now specifically talking about this, this property in Westminster is connected to the Westminster Fiber Network, blah, blah, blah. And people are very interested in that. And it's now a marketing differentiator. And we heard one story of a guy that was in Westminster, moved outside the city, and realized how crappy the difference in the service was, and moved back. And he goes around telling people, like, holy, what a mistake that was, outside the city. So
before we lose you, I do want to ask you about telehealth, because you partook in a remarkable study with Lisa Hogan, Frederick Memorial, and I'm curious if you can outline that in a minute or two with the top line numbers.
Oh, you're killing me. I don't have those on my top of my head.
Well, okay.
But I'll tell you just the concept. It is a variety of telehealth called remote patient monitoring. And we created, or Lisa created, this program to use remote patient monitoring for a certain class of patients who were what we call the frequent flyers. You know, they were in and out of the emergency room a lot, or they had a lot of chronic disease comorbidities, and used basically remote data collection and frequent nurse communication to do more intensive case management, and it's saved the health system millions of dollars. A fairly small group of patients, 300, 400 patients, by keeping them out of the ER and by decreasing their number of their readmissions, made a huge difference in their healthcare consumption and kept them healthier and kept them home. And the interesting thing from a broadband perspective is the technologies used were very low bandwidth. They didn't require a lot, but some of the people lived in areas of our community that's all they had anyway. So, but it's just a little example of what's possible when people are connected well and it's used effectively for managing healthcare problems.
And if I could just highlight a couple of things that then we built on for a report that RIDE did that we released a few months ago. You said savings of millions of dollars. I think that was on costs of like a few $100,000. So more than a 10x
huge
savings.
return. Yeah.
But one of the important things is it wasn't just throwing a tablet at people. It was recognizing that having that technology allowed for a different delivery of care, which wasn't wait until the patient has a problem and then check in on them. My dad had a significant surgery and they sent him home with a staple removal kit and were basically like, we'll check in on you in like a month. And like his back had been like totally cut open so they could work on his spine. And we were like, really? Like, you're not even going to call him in a week to see how he's doing? Like, what?
Yeah.
So this is one of the things is that like, we're finding as this study is now 3-4 years old. And we've been trying to work with Connect Humanity to find other places where we could bring in philanthropic dollars, replicate it, demonstrate it. And frankly, one of the things that we see with a resistance in the healthcare field is they're sort of like, we don't want our nurse to be checking in on a patient every day. We want to do the old model that we're used to, and a resistance to change, it seems like.
Well, there's a very compelling reason for that, and it's about the compensation model, and so Maryland, this kind of shift to this model where you're pushing resources deep into the community, it makes sense because in Maryland we have this very centralized fixed costs approach to healthcare, and in other states where it's still fee for service, there's no incentive to do this because they kind of want you to come back to the ER and they want you to come back and be admitted to the hospital because more billable procedures, everybody gets paid. And Maryland has moved beyond that. Maryland is now back to kind of come full circle to the HMO model where it's instead of capitation, it's just the whole health system gets a lump and then you've got to manage to that number. But you're also held accountable, unlike before in the HMO days, you're held accountable for quality of care and patient satisfaction. And they've developed very sophisticated metrics to measure all that stuff. And it's brutal, but it's working. It's reducing costs, quality's still good, so that's why this model makes sense in Maryland. But it wouldn't make sense in the areas where you're still fee for service. They're like, yeah, whatever, just come on back. We'll bill you some more.
Any other comments before we jump back to the FCC from anyone?
Congratulations. Congratulations.
Yes,
Thank you.
Absolutely. I want to hear all about the symmetric gigabit now. So.
Yeah. I'm still stuck on 11 votes.
Yeah.
Boy, that was tight, wasn't it?
Indeed. It was a political near-death experience.
Well, yeah, thank you for coming in and hanging out with us.
Sure.
Yeah, and I'll note that I think if every city had a Dr. Wack, we'd see a lot more of these networks, right? And one of the things about feasibility study is not that they had an amazing feasibility study, it's that they had a person who stuck with it, and probably other people too. I'm sure you'd share credit, Robert. It's worth noting that the quality of people you put into running your community matters. And so
it absolutely matters. Yep.
Unlike at the FCC, where nothing matters, and I want to come back to this, and I say that again, like Travis, I agree with him. Like, I do think there's an extent to which these institutions are both important, but also we can get by without them. And at a certain point, things may run off the rails, but that doesn't happen right away. So the FCC is looking like it is going to go to 100 by 20 megabit per second definition for broadband.
What?
Which, Travis, this is what I predicted. And basically the FCC says that in the year 2023, heading into 2024, perhaps it'll be 2024 when this definition comes into place, that a speed that the cable companies can do everywhere is the definition of broadband, because that's convenient. And it is a heck of a lot better than 25.3. It is not forward-looking, but I'm curious about the reaction. Doug, you wrote a post about it, and you said the exact same thing that I said in my frustration.
It's not even currently. 75% of all homes in the U.S. already subscribe to speeds of at least 300 megabits. So it's not even looking at the actual market that we're in. I mean, so that's a crazy definition. There's only something now like under 20% of people who are subscribing to speednets. Well, it's not even looking at what people are buying today. Isn't the definition of broadband what people are buying?
Well,
it
should be what
minimum
they're actually
definition.
receiving.
Well, no.
But what they're receiving too, right? I mean, we can say anything.
Yeah.
I mean, until you measure it in what people are actually receiving, it doesn't matter what the definition of broadband is. It's the definition of marketing. And I think that is a different conversation. But is anybody even happy about this? I think people are happy, and I think people should still be irritated that we haven't gone further. We just can't keep doing this, guys. At the UTOPIA Network, we have more than half of every new subscriber signs up for gig when the lowest option is 250 symmetrical. The market has changed, and we need to be in times with it.
Yeah,
I'm very passionate about this topic.
Yes, very, very out of touch with the real life. Yeah.
What was it again? It's 100 by 20.
Yeah.
Oh, well, we know why that is. That's pretty obvious.
Yeah,
it's the cable. It's the cable upload.
Oh, not even cable. That's driven by the cellular industry right there.
Yeah.
So I and Doug, you can disagree, and Robert, you might too, but I don't think that the mobile wireless folks care about the definition of broadband for a fixed service, and I don't think the FCC cares about the WISP's position for fixed wireless. Frankly, I wish they did, but I don't think they do.
Except that AT&T has said they're probably going to go after a bunch of BEAD funding, so they do care. Yes.
So I don't think the cellular companies care, but the cable companies care that because it takes the pressure off them. So if they define it in such a way that, because people have all these cellular services, they're good, then it removes the impetus for projects like ours. And anything that does that, that's really, I think, taking the pressure off of or undermining the argument for doing any sort of public investments that's the key. That's the goal.
Yeah, you have to remember this is a political number. Every time they raise the number, they're saying this many more houses don't have broadband. So if they even made it 100 by 100, they would be declaring 80 million homes to not have broadband.
Yeah, I mean,
that's the problem. That's a political number. It has nothing to do with what people want to buy. So
this week's show of Community Broadband Bits is John Chambers. I don't know if Rise posted it already or not, but it'll be out today likely. And we talk about a little bit about this toward the end, because Charter has told California that it cannot deliver 20 megabits upload to everyone, which is an interesting sort of as they were, because California was arguing, it was trying to set a more aggressive definition at one point. And so Ernesto Falcone with EFF had been talking about what comments that the charter was making to the Public Utilities Commission and others. But I think this, it comes down to a difficult situation, which is that, do I think that it would be appropriate for the FCC to declare that a bunch of cable companies that are more or less meeting most people's needs on the upstream, that it is not broadband anymore? I think then we're arguing about, what is broadband? Because I think at 20 megabits per second upload, it sucks when I'm trying to transfer a big file, but for a majority of things I do, it actually works out okay. And I think at a certain point, it's this question of, are we going to argue about speeds and all of the problems that come into that and how variable they are? Or are we going to focus on having technology that meets our needs? And that's muddy in a different way.
We already answered that question because he already gave us the answer in that businesses, it's not adequate for. That's not at all an adequate speed for businesses because they don't make one Zoom connection. They make 6 of them. You can't do that on 20 megabits. The fact is, and they have all their software in the cloud on a VoIP, you name it, right? 20 megabits is nowhere close to adequate, even for some small businesses. Are we going to leave the business community behind with a crappy definition? So
and even for residential customers, if you've got one person at home working or doing anything, it breaks down fast,
And let's talk to any household with teenage gamers, and you tell me it's adequate.
Exactly.
Travis.
I mean, other than the obvious, which is the FCC definition wins me chicken wings every single year, what else do we really care what they called that broadband?
Yeah, I mean, so it sends a signal to all of the states and people who are not sophisticated are supposed to say, I don't know much about this, but I can rely on the definition of the expert agency from the government to basically make sure that, we have the relevant things for our applications, for setting up a grant program. If they're trying to understand, do they actually have a problem? Go ahead, Kim.
When did we ever think that any governmental program was the example for, what did you say, excellency or?
But I mean, that's the thing. I mean, we do. I mean, environmental protection agency develops standards for what constitutes healthy air and healthy water and whatnot. And there's arguments about it. And industry has a point of view, and people that want things to be still more clean have a point of view. And we try to get a sense of when there's impurities and pollutants, what is the impact and what does that cost and things like that. So I am deeply frustrated with the level of corruption that we have in government. And by that, I sort of mean the full style of corruption, not like paper bags of money, but just the fact that industry has so much control over some of these things. But I'm not willing to, as long as I'm working in this job for this low salary, I could be working for Travis for a lot more money, I assume, Travis,
he knows what you're willing to take. He knows what you're willing to take. But I think the thing is, if we've all been waiting and people have been waiting for years to wait for this number to come out, we wouldn't be where we are today. And I think that's great that you have a subpar standard, but it doesn't mean for people who are actually trying to implement change at all.
And actually, there's one place that it does, Kim, and that there are people who are going to get grant money to build a network that can do that speed, and that's a travesty.
That is a fair point. That is a fair point, Doug.
That's where those people are just royally screwed. I mean, that's too bad.
The other thing about this that I will say is that I have said that I thought 120 was a reasonable compromise before. I think that was more like 2020, 2021 when I was saying that. I think that you're all persuasive about that not being an appropriate standard today. Harold Feld, with whom I've had a lot of discussions, he works for Public Knowledge. He's been someone who, has really been on the side of the public interest unwaveringly in a very thoughtful way for decades. And one of his rules is that when a policymaker, moves in your direction, you say thank you. And you don't sit there and say, you didn't come far enough and you're still a bastard and all this other stuff. And so, Robert, I'm curious how you react to that, in that, I feel like a lot of us are sort of like, it's not enough and we still don't like you and this and that, versus saying, you know what, this is a much better standard. I'm glad that we're here. I wish that we could go further.
Yeah, so I have many minds about this. On the one hand, I'm all about half a loaf or a quarter of a loaf. I'll take whatever I can get. On the other hand, thin-skinned elected officials who need to be flattered and fluffed and handheld and stroked constantly just irritate the crap out of me and are very frustrating to deal with on both sides. Now in my current job and before as an elected official, when you were working with elected officials in other jurisdictions and some of that crap. I mean, Jesus, anyway. But yes, generally, I think Harold is correct, and I agree with him that you take what you can get, you just keep moving it forward bit by bit, and there are no permanent friends, no permanent enemies, only permanent interests, and that is I think Mickey Leland quote, but anyway, or maybe it's somebody else, Harry Truman, I don't know, but yeah, you take what you can get and just keep pushing.
You're so optimistic, Robert. You're so optimistic about like the world. That was like just a motivational speech in a reply. So I appreciate that.
Well, Kim, that
with a quote.
That leads into what I was thinking. Does anyone else want to move to Westminster now? Jeez. Sounds like quite a place.
What's the pierogi scene there? You're close enough to get some good cheesesteaks, I think.
Well, but also, those of us that are building fiber networks, let's be careful what we wish for. Let's just say that the FCC came out with gig by gig and they started giving money to everybody we'd be much less competitive than we are today. So, careful how low you shoot, you might hit. The FCC is going to hit it this time, which is great. So we won't deal with this now for 10 more years.
No, it'll probably be another 7 or 8 till they look at it again. I mean, you make a good point in that this keeps cable companies crappy.
I love it.
That doesn't sound like a good idea to me.
Go ahead, Robert, and then I have a thought too.
No. I finally saw where you were going with that line of reasoning, and I think you're right.
I mean, I would say that if
crappy.
Here's my problem
win the election. If Republicans win the election, the speed definition will not be revisited until Democrats win again, I suspect. If Democrats win the election, the speed will be increased when DOCSIS 4 has been substantially rolled out. At the point at which cable companies can meet that speed, then the definition will be increased. And so the definition will continue to be a trailing indicator of decent service, would be my expectation, given the makeup of the FCC.
And here's my problem with that. Comcast said they can do a mid-level split to get people up to 200 megabit upload for $100 a customer. Charter said it would take them 200. So let's call it 150, somewhere in between the two of them. That's not a lot of money to spend on a customer who gives you $100 a month, is it, Travis? So, I mean, the fact is they could have faster speeds today. 100 by 100 is absolutely something they could achieve a year from now. So that's not a big investment. And they say it's easy. Now, maybe they're lying about that, but they keep bragging about how easy it would be for them to do that mid-level split. And so by keeping the definition low, they're not going to increase it very quickly. So, and they'll only increase it in competitive markets.
Well, and all the fiber overbuilders are, they're all 10 gig capable now. So let the cable companies deal in megabits. We'll deal.
You're right. It's a trailing indicator, but it just keeps taking cable companies off the hook to do their job. So.
Yeah.
Okay, this was a great conversation. There's one other one that I wanted to try and sneak in under the wire. Robert, if you have to leave, go ahead, but I'd love to have you stick around. And that's the Buy America. And Doug, this morning I got to sit at a table with some folks from Nokia. Last week they announced that they're manufacturing OLTs, ONTs, and the optics, I believe, here, in the United States, as well as one other piece. Pretty big announcement, I think. Also makes it far less likely that there will be a waiver in a way that I think some of the other vendors were expecting. But I was just interested, and I think maybe we could talk about this more in the future, about what how one can go from GPON to XGS-PON to now a 25 gigabit optic on the XGS-PON and how that works. I was pretty interesting. I learned a lot about it this morning.
Well, I think the Buy America thing is working. There's something like 20 new fiber-related factories, including several who actually make fiber cable. I mean, it's driving people to bring factories here, and we've needed that for the last 20 years. So I think it's absolutely fabulous. I think it's good that they'll do the waiver. The interesting thing about it, this is my little twist on it, is guess who buys Nokia gear?
The big ones.
Guys.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I was thinking.
So they're not going to. So now, if they keep
Adtran and Calix,
I hope they keep the waiver for the other companies, or I hope they waive it for the other companies. Otherwise, this is another way to give all the grants to the big companies.
Yeah, that's one of the things I was wondering about is whether, so Nokia, it took time for them to make this happen. And if Calix and Adtran were just hoping on a waiver and they don't have plans, it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
But Nokia has a giant market here because they sell to the big guys. That's who buys the vast majority of the equipment.
Right.
Well, Calix doesn't make enough gear to justify that size of an investment here, to be honest. I mean, that's the reality of the marketplace. So it could turn out that that's a good thing. It could turn out that that's another way to give all the money to the big guys.
Doug, you are correct. The small guys won't be running it. It's too expensive.
Right.
Travis, the stuff that you're running, is any of that? I mean, you don't
well,
get
we're
it.
active. So is Kim, but our XGS platform is Cambium. So here's the thing with Ethernet, it's a unified standard. Now, my understanding with XGS-PON, it's now a unified standard as well. So
it is.
You can mix and match companies. So you might buy America, they might buy the the OLT from somebody, but all the ONTs are going to be Chinese or Taiwanese product. You just can't afford to do it otherwise. It's just too expensive.
So the other piece of that is I do think that whether it was a year ago, 2 years ago, we were talking about this. Doug and I remember both were saying we supported the idea of this, but we weren't sure how effective it would be. To me, it looks like a lot of these provisions are hitting the goal of onshoring this production. However, it's running the costs up, and I think we're getting back to that question that Travis asks, because at this point now, you might have to pay more for this equipment. You have, as we talked about, significant permitting costs and challenges still. And then at the end of it, you still have to pay 20% tax on all of if you're a for-profit company or if you're in certain partnerships with cooperatives on the award. And you have all these extra labor standards and whatnot. And I can't believe that they haven't resolved some of this. It's remarkable. Go ahead, Travis.
I know.
Can we ask Dr. Wack the question? What percentage of the BEAD dollars will go to the incumbents? Your estimate. I'm at 99.
Oh, I'm so excited. I'm so excited for this answer. What is it? What do you think, Dodger?
Chris Mitchell, he actually said in one of those podcasts he was in the 90s. So I'm just curious.
I missed that. I mean, it's not, the incumbents always win. So, if Chris said 90%, I think that's probably likely, but I don't really have any special insight into that other than cynicism.
I'm still in the 80s only because there's some states who are going to work very hard not to give it to the incumbents.
Which one?
Well, there's quite a few states who don't want to do that if they don't have to. So.
Okay. But I think from what I'm hearing, a lot of them don't want to do that, but they don't know if they have any option.
They may not have a choice. Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been a long show. Robert, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah. Thank you guys. Doug and Travis, nice to meet you. Kim, it was great seeing you again. I wish I was in Denver. We were just out there a couple of weeks ago for another conference, a health thing, and I love that city. So have a good time.
Thank you.
I'm excited. Oh gosh, no, not again.
Thanks for having me.
I'm glad we could pull this together. I'm sorry to be missing some of this wonderful show here, but we really wanted to talk about some of the stuff that's going on with the FCC and whatnot. So whether it is in a week, 2 weeks, or 3 weeks, we'll be back at some point with another episode of Connect This.